I did a deep dive. So I want you to pay attention to the very end of this riff. It's about stats, which is going to make your face hurt, but hang in there and make sure you pay attention to the end, which says everything. I had a feeling, I've been thinking all football season. I just had a feeling if somebody did this study that somehow it would circle back, and that is precisely what has happened. It's about the stats, and the most important stat of all is provided in the very end. So I'm going to risk being the football version of the get off my lawn guy. I think college and pro coaches, and have said this all year long, and now thankfully backed up by something, but I think college and pro coaches throwing around the term analytics has become an excuse for dumb decisions, right? It's like a weekly occurrence. No, it is a weekly occurrence. The analytics say is now a phrase you hear in almost every post-game news conference, usually from the losing coach, right? Well, the analytics, we were following the analytics, blah, blah, blah. And it's almost always coming from the losing coach. So when the idiotic attempts to go forward on 4th and 4 or 4th and 6, or even at times 4th and 2, or the idiotic effort to bypass an almost guaranteed field goal. Okay? Or, throw this one out there too, since it seems to be kind of relevant now, choosing to take the ball first in overtime of a Super Bowl when Patrick Mahomes is standing on the other sideline. Just when in doubt, when you do those things, use the term analytics. That's it. Throw it out there, and everyone's going to act as if, ooh, he's just too smart, so we better not question it even further. I've been questioning these decisions, these so-called risky, awkward decisions based on analytics. I've been questioning them every single week, and now we have a Super Bowl example that proves my point. Proves my point. And the guy is suffering, but he's throwing out analytics. So it really is a situation where every single news conference, you use the term analytics, and the coach is guilty of doing something really dumb, but I feel this way, but is able to pass the decision off on the Stanford-educated, nameless, faceless statistician, right? If you just say analytics, it's not the coach's fault anymore. It's that nerd who you never see or hear from that crunched the numbers on 4th and 4. That person's at fault. I just follow the data. Is pretty much the way things have turned out. Yeah, well, they're losers. You've heard the term a lot this year. You've heard it even more, and I don't think it's going to go anytime soon, from the coach of the losing 49ers post-Super Bowl, the term analytics. So what does that even mean anyway is a very reasonable question. Baseball has used analytics for almost its entire existence, but NFL teams have started using analytics. I think we could just say that's loosely defined. I don't think loosely defined. I think it is defined as the statistical probability to guide in-game decisions and or evaluate players. But you're taking data, a total amount of data, over X number of plays, X number of games, X number of players. You're just compiling all the data of stuff that has happened in the past, okay? Stuff that has happened in the past to help you make that decision in that moment. That's what it is. And that's the excuse that they like to use. So, I'm not arguing the historical data, arguing how you're going about making these decisions, and it's not working. So analytics, oddly enough, this was part of my deep dive here, analytics became a thing, a bigger thing in the NFL around 2010. And the more I read, the more research I did, it mainly started with the credit, I guess, go for the introduction of more analytics and football decision-making goes to Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. He buys the Eagles, and one of the first things that he did was bring in MIT-trained statisticians. And it's not the only place that analytics came from, but that is mostly when it started to be adopted by teams around the league. And there's actually data now, and it should tell you everything about who uses analytics more than everyone else. I think that's really important. So he really kind of gets the credit for making it popular, making it a thing for everybody. And I assume the college programs then, because they have unlimited money, they'll spend money on anything. This is no joke, they start hiring out statisticians to crunch these numbers on this historical data, and then they just check it off a sheet and say 4th and 4. Well, historically, 4th and 4 means 62%. Just do it. It's asinine. It's an asinine way to operate a football team. I can tell you why and give you the example. So that's where it all comes from. Okay. Now you've heard it play out by now. Here's the way it goes. And you have the Super Bowl losing coach doing this already. Fill in the blank coach, usually the losing coach, no, almost always the losing coach, sits in a news conference and answers questions why going forward on 4th down was a better idea than kicking a field goal, of which it doesn't take long to figure out. That's about a 92% probability. The coach answers for why he went for it. And when going forward on 4th and 4 doesn't work, he says that's what the analytics say to do in that situation. That's the way it works. That's the way the Super Bowl losing coach has approached it. So does it really work out that way? And the answer is, for the most part, no. Think about the playoffs. This is when, mumbling Mike McCarthy has been doing this for a while, but you see it in almost every single game, except the teams that win a lot. But you see it in almost every single game. These decisions. I can't just blame Mike McCarthy of Dallas for being a knucklehead. I mean, it goes on everywhere. But think about the playoffs. The Detroit Lions lost in the NFC Championship game. They blew a big lead in the process. After at least 2 analytics decisions. These are decisions we hear are based on historical data, right? At least 2. Including not kicking a field goal, a 94% conversion rate. And their head coach, Dan Campbell, goes for it on 4th and 4, whatever, doesn't convert. And then the answer, of course, is analytics. Now, you've got the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, not a dumb guy. I'm not saying anyone that uses analytics. I'm saying they try to sound smarter by using analytics. I'm saying analytics has become just the way to pawn off decision-making. You're not really held accountable because it's that faceless statistician that does this stuff. We're just using the numbers. It's not me. It's not me. So now you got Kyle Shanahan, who is on now the losing end of 3 Super Bowls, all of which his team has led by double digits, and they've lost. Okay? He decides to take the ball first in overtime of the Super Bowl, in which both teams are guaranteed a possession, unless there's a safety. That's it. Both teams are guaranteed a possession unless there's a safety. His team now says we didn't know the rules, blah, 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 blah. He takes the ball first when the right decision is to play defense to then see what your offense needs to do to win on your possession. Because it's a completely different in the moment, not historical data. In the moment play calling is completely different when you're thinking, okay, we need to get the ball to the 35. We need to get the ball to the 40, whatever. We need to get the ball to this yardage marker so we can kick a field goal and win the game. Or we now know we have to score a touchdown. That's exactly the decision you make in the moment. So, in case you've been under a rock, which is pretty hard to believe since 200 million people watched some of the Super Bowl, mostly the halftime show. San Francisco gets the ball. He wants it first. They go down, kick a field goal. And that's pretty much telling the second greatest closer in the history of the game. Here you go. You now know what to do. Patrick Mahomes says, thank you. I now know what we need to do. And they won. Now, Kyle Shanahan has the entire offseason to keep saying that's what the analytics said to do. Okay, so I think the analytics, using historical data to make in-game decisions in the moment, I think it's football's version of paralysis by analysis. See, the numbers, here's the deal. I've been trying to figure out a way all year long when these knuckle-headed moves are made, how to explain it. And now the more that I've learned about where the analytics come from and all that, the only thing they're using is a snapshot of historical data. So these are numbers based on just a snapshot of one play. So if you just have hired someone to go look up the data on 4th and 4 at midfield, what is the historical conversion rate? I suspect that number comes up pretty positive historically. But that's not at all how a game works. Okay? You take a snapshot of one play historically, kicking a field goal instead of going forward here, taking the ball first instead of, you can put all that stuff into the mix, but it's one play. One play of today is nothing like one play of 4th and 4 when the field is muddy, or 4th and 4 when the wind is blowing, or 4th and 4 when your punter's not very good, or 4th and 4 when your punter's great. I knew this was wrong all along. Let me explain. So you're taking a snapshot without taking everything into consideration. But isn't that why you pay a coach? Isn't that what you're supposed to be doing? Aren't you supposed to find these decision makers? That's what the head coach ultimately has to do. The head coach doesn't decide every single play. The head coach doesn't decide every single draft pick. The head coach doesn't make every single play calling decision, but they do make the decisions on field goals, penalties, going forward on 4th down, going forward on 2, deciding the coin toss. They make these giant decisions. And if you just use analytics, you're not taking everything into account. That's what you pay the coach to do. The head coach is supposed to take everything into account and make decisions that help you win. If the only factor, which is what analytics has become, is a one-play decision, just by adding up the numbers, why not just have it like an AI for a coach? What difference does it make? Why would I need your knowledge? Why would I need your perspective on wind, rain, offensive momentum, punters, kickers, defense, players injured? Why would I need your perspective? I just punch in the number. I think I have some guy on his phone over there. So what does it say? What does it say? Okay, we do that here. What's the point in the head coach? That's where the analytics is off. The decision is based on historical data of one play. It has nothing to do with the present. You're using one play, one decision at the coin toss. That data doesn't know it's Patrick Mahomes on the other side, does it? That data is factoring in Mitch Trubisky on the side, which is asinine. It's a snapshot of data that's not considering everything that can happen. And I've argued all along, most importantly, all the things that go into making the play work. And if the play doesn't work, you have to factor that in. Field conditions, weather conditions, kicker success, punter success. What if your quarterback's not had a hot hand? What if? What if your left guard is injured? It doesn't factor all that stuff in. The health of the players, the health of the defense. Decision isn't a one-off, and that's all this has become. It's just a one-off, and I think it's an excuse. I think these guys get a pass. So a coach has to think of the consequences. This is what drives me crazy about people that like to cheer for going forward on 4th down. You've not considered the consequences if you don't make it. All you've factored in is we've got an 82% chance of converting 4th and 4. What you haven't said is if we don't, we're screwed. Because that guy over there is going to score. It's unreal. So the ESPN did a study. Here's what you'll like the most. ESPN does this study. All right, I promised you analytics is the easy way out, in my opinion. I promised you the stat about stats, and this will tell you everything you need to know about analytics in football. This is it. Next time you hear somebody say it, I want you to just remember this. So ESPN did a study. And it's true. There's an obscene amount of data out there. It's cool to nerd out to. But ESPN does a study of the NFL teams that use analytics, okay, historical data to make a one-play decision, or historical data to make player evaluation decisions. I read this thing, like 40 pages in. I read this thing about, I can't remember which team had it. They decided that offensive linemen that ran a sub 5.3, and they used this based on a sample size of like 2,000 players, that ran better than a 5.3 had a better chance of success. And I'm thinking, who did you pay to tell you that? You mean the fat, slow guy's not as good as the not fat, slow guy? That's well done. But ESPN does this study on the teams that use analytics most often. Of course, then they come back and say, here are the teams that use analytics least often. Do you want to take a guess where this is going? The teams that use analytics most often would be the Cleveland Browns. Their general manager is an Ivy League economics guy. Now, that worked out pretty well with Deshaun Watson, didn't it? Pretty well thought out. I'm sure some data told him that was a great idea. The Cleveland Browns, the Raiders, and the Eagles are the teams that ESPN found used analytics the most. Would you like to guess the team that uses analytics the least? Old school. You don't know what's going on. You're not progressive enough. You don't get it, old man. That team, by the way, the team that uses analytics the least, happens to have the second greatest quarterback of all time, the second best coach of all time. It's also the team that uses analytics the least. That's the team that has now won 2 Super Bowls in a row, and I think is a pretty good bet to be the first team ever to win 3 in a row. The Chiefs, old, frumpy, don't know what's going on. Coach is a buffoon. He's just a big old fat old guy. Need some young guys. The Chiefs are at or near the bottom when it comes to the use of analytics. The Chiefs, the one where the coach sort of factors in everything. The one where the coach had already told his team, if we go to overtime in the Super Bowl, if we go to overtime in the playoffs, what we want to do first is we want to defend first because that way we know what to do. He didn't need an MIT statistician to tell him that. He didn't really need any kind of statistics and historical data to say, all I know is I got the best quarterback on the planet. I like my chances.